A lot of coaches will talk about, and a lot of fighters will think when someone gets them down, don't expend too much energy trying to get back up or throwing up random stuff because you're going to gas yourself out. But really, your only other option is to just lay underneath them the whole fight. All right, welcome everybody. It is January 16th. We are going into fight week of UFC 297. I'm here with Christian Howes. This is the Sanabul Fight Buzz podcast, and we're super excited to get into this one. Christian, are you in a hotel room?
Yeah, I'm doing the show on the road today. I'm up in Ottawa for work, so I'm fired up.
Well, as everyone doesn't know but should know, we're both Canadian here, so this fight week is super exciting for us, specifically for sure. It's going to be one of the first ones in Ontario in a very long time. I think it's probably since Georges St. Pierre. I don't know about for sure, but that's what it feels like to me, at least. Yeah, but I'm excited. There's a bunch of Canadian fighters on this card, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, this one seems to hit home for me. I really did want to go. I know it's only in Toronto. It's not that far away, but
I know.
Just didn't work out. I guess I'll have to catch the next one. Hopefully this does like a ton of buys and really well at the gate, and they come back soon.
I think it will, but it's not sold out yet. So I don't know if they're normally sold out by Tuesday, or it might be just not sold out through like Ticketmaster and stuff, because they probably, I don't know how it works, but maybe they buy tickets from like the UFC. So then the UFC tickets are sold out, and then they have tickets. I don't know how it works, but I was thinking about going by myself because I can't find anyone who wants to go.
And I would love to. It's so tough. Like I heard a lot of people saying like, oh, this card's not that great, but I don't know if it's just because I'm Canadian and like we're Canadian, so we just see the potential. But I'm like, this is a pretty good card to me. Like I'm excited.
Yeah, I think just like it's kind of like one of the cards that we talk about a lot, where it's just a lot of really high skilled matchups, and then a lot of Canadian contenders that people seem to like not know about yet too. But I think there's a bunch of good ones, and we're going to get into that. We do have to recap Ankalaev and Walker on UFC Vegas 84. So we'll jump into that before we go into UFC 297. There's timestamps as well, just for everyone watching. So if you want to skip to the UFC 297 chat, you can feel free to do that as well. But we're going to jump into Marcus McGhee is the first thing I want to talk about. What a performance. It was beautiful.
Yeah, like truly, absolutely beautiful. You said he's like a regular sparring partner for Sean, right?
You can tell.
Yeah, wow, like powerful guy. I couldn't believe, man, some of those hooks and like shots he was landing. I was like, you know, obviously we're just watching and listening, but you could hear these shots landing and see the impact they were having. And I was like, oh my goodness, like he was devastating. Looked great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also like when I watched that finishing sequence, I wasn't even thinking about how he trains with Sean, and I was like, that looks exactly like Sean's striking, like the spinning wheel kick, and then just like picking his shots so carefully, and the whole fight he was picking his shots beautifully. It was just like completely, it was the technique that he presented, and then just shutting down everything from Gaston.
Yeah, and I feel like he fought with a lot of confidence. That was a big thing. Like he looked poised, like really, really poised. Yeah, he looked awesome.
I'm sure being in that camp with Sean and learning from him and Tim and he's been on Tim's podcast too, and learning all that stuff just about the breathing, about like the mental preparation, meditation, being ready going to a fight, being calm, and then being confident, like picking your shots is just so important, and not being emotional too. Like you could see there was no emotion, even when he got tagged once in a while, maybe he was maybe not landing some, but like he just looked perfect throughout the whole fight. And I'm super excited to see what's next for him, because he's really, really good.
Seriously, he made a statement for himself, and that was a gorgeous shot that he finished it with. Like that, wow, that was really well done.
Yeah, let's go right into the main card of that event. We got Hawes and Ferreira. So I was completely wrong on this one. You were definitely a lot more on point there with Ferreira. I couldn't see it in him. I just couldn't give him that. Yeah, I mean, like you were a lot higher on Ferreira than I was. I mean, he was great, and I think a lot of people were overestimating. They were talking about how bad Phil Hawes' chin was at this point in his career, and it just seems to be showing in a lot of different fights, which is unfortunate. And I also just recently watched the Chris Curtis and Phil Hawes fight, just to watch back some Chris Curtis footage before this card, and yeah, I mean, the chin wasn't there for that fight either. It's just, it seems he shuts down. So I don't know if he's getting hit with hard shots and he's almost giving up. I don't think that's the case. I think maybe he's just got less of a chin than some other guys do, which is kind of unfortunate if that's just how it works.
Yeah, it's tough. Like It really is tough because, like, if you look at them, if you just watch them both in like successful fights, I just thought that Phil looked like a cleaner, like more poised, experienced striker. Bruno just has this like crazy strength. I'm still not 100% convinced on that Bruno shouldn't be like trying to slim down to a lighter weight. He just looks a little husky for the 185 to me. I think like I don't know. I don't want to discredit him off a win, but he just looks like it's almost like watching Calvin Gaston, and you look at him and you think at 185, and you're like, yeah, he looks like he could get down. You know what I mean? He looks like he could reach that 170 if he wanted to, and if that power would translate, I don't know. But at the end of the day, if you're shutting guys' lights off, why would you try to drop it all?
Yeah, for sure. And then it just takes away all of that like suckiness out of your camp, and it just lets you prepare more and focus on the things that really matter instead of that weight cut, I guess. And if he can hold that gas tank at a higher weight class, I mean, more power to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wonder what's going to be next for him, because he's what, like 11-1 now off this?
Yeah, I think so. Probably nothing big. Probably maybe top 15.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. And that's
because at this point it sucks because Phil Haas isn't like a very powerful statement win at this point. No. Especially if you knock him out. Yeah,
no, you're totally right. I mean, we could see maybe the loser of the Chris Curtis fight this weekend, actually.
Possibly, yeah, for sure. Moving on, we had Ricky Simon and Mario Batista. This was a sick fight. This was a wild fight. I knew it coming in that Ricky Simone's just such a fun fighter to watch, and I knew like it was just going to be nonstop action, and that's what it was. What do you think about that?
I thought that was a great fight. Holy moly. Like, just like at the beginning, the way that Ricky was eating, like Batista was landing some of those knees, I thought he was going to shut him off with those. Like, in that first round, you could hear him say it in between rounds, between 1 and 2, like, I can't throw the knee anymore because like, he's not getting the space, is kind of how I was interpreting it. But, man, like, he came out and you could tell he had a great game plan of, like, I gotta show him up the middle so that if he drops his head for those takedowns, it's there. And it almost did. And there was a couple times he even threw the knee when they were standing up striking. Like, it was really impressive. Like, Bautista threw it. And I watched the one, like, Ricky went to come over top with an overhand right or something. So he kind of moved his head. And as he did, that knee was, like, right beside his chin. And I was like, wow. Like, he almost shut him off with that. Like, that was a great fight. But, like, gas tanks, too.
For sure. In that bantamweight division, like both of those guys are super good in those gas tanks. And I mean, Batista, one of the best things about him, like when you watch him fight, for me, there's no physical attributes that stand out. I don't see much of like so rangy, just picking people apart. No, I don't see any like massive power, like nothing that stands out to me, but implementing that game plan and being smart and strategic in your fight, and whether it goes to a decision, it doesn't matter as long as you're winning that fight and not getting finished. And he just turns off those emotions. And he's also in that same Marcus McGhee and Sean Camp at the MMA lab in Arizona. So I think it makes sense. You just see fighters out of there just being so smart in every fight.
Yeah, I thought that exactly as you were saying that, I was thinking that he implemented the game plan well. Like, you heard his coaches in between rounds telling him they wanted the 1-2-1 and like straight stuff down the middle. That's all they were really looking for in between rounds, and he came out and he kept doing it. Like, he looked great, and the takedown defense from him, because Ricky Simone's he's a beast on the mat and like getting guys to the ground. He's big, he's very strong, like physically like bigger, and looked much stronger than Bautista. And Bautista did a really good job, like relatively staying on his feet and keeping the fight going. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, like to Ricky Simone's, like, just to give him some positive feedback, like that, when he picked him up over his shoulder and carried him to his corner, I was watching with a couple people and I was like, that doesn't happen. People don't, like, it has happened, but when it does happen, it's crazy. And there's only like a couple guys who I could name off the top of my head who have done that, like Hamzat. And I don't even know if I could think of anyone else, but I know I've seen it. But it's just not something that happens very often. And it takes a calm mind, and it takes a smart fighter in that heat of the moment to be able to pick him up and carry him to your corner and dump him. So
and I think that was in the third round too, was it not?
I think it was second or third. Yeah,
it's like late enough in the fight that like he probably didn't have like a full gas tank. it just, I couldn't believe watching those guys throw, like, the pace in the third round. They were standing there going at it with. I'm like, holy, they've been going at this, like, I don't know what that works out to, 12, 13 minutes at this point, and they're still throwing with, like, a lot of intensity and great speed and technique. Like, those bantamweights are so much fun to watch.
Yeah. And then Jim Miller and Mowgli. Jim Miller shows it once again, and he wants to fight at UFC 300. I mean, there's not much to talk about here. Jim Miller does the same thing over and over and over again, and we didn't doubt him, but whoever is just needs to stop doubting him.
Yeah, and I think you called the submission out. I think I had him by TKO, but yeah, you called it to a T. I mean, and you got to get him on 300. Let's go. Him and Paul Felder, let's go.
That would be so sick. And Paul Felder's always been one of my favorite fighters. He's just a savage. Just him and Jim Miller would just be, I could be a main event fight for sure on UFC 300. I would love to see that.
Yeah, and they've talked about how he was on 100
Not
and
main
200.
Event. Main card, sorry.
Yeah, main card. They talked about him on 100 and 200, and then it's like you have to put him on 300. Of all the guys, like, it's got to be Jim. Plus, like we talked about, he's on an impressive little stint. Like, he's done really well in his last 5. Like, it's honestly, it's a tough opponent for Paul Felder to come back against. It could be a hard fight.
For sure. But yeah, I mean, if anyone's like, Paul Felder's a savage. If he puts his mind to it, there could be a war no matter what, for sure.
Oh, hell yeah.
Then we got Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev. Yeah, I mean, Magomed Ankalaev is, it's like you said, we talked about it earlier. You said he's a dark horse in the division and the boogeyman, and that's exactly what he is. He's a scary fighter to go up against. He's so technically sound. And Johnny was trying with those leg kicks, and Ankalaev was just giving them right back. And I mean, he shut him down.
That was such a weird start to a fight, and Johnny Walker is just so weird. But like even the both of them, I don't know how many actual punches were thrown in the first round. It felt like 100 leg kicks and calf kicks from each of them, a few axe kicks from Johnny Walker, and some spinning back fists.
Yeah.
It's so weird, but I mean, it was kind of cool to watch, like, the resolve of Ankalaev just wait it out. Like, just wait for Johnny to stop doing all the weird, wacky stuff. Like, eventually we're going to get to the brass tacks and go at it.
Yeah, but it's so unfortunate because I think everyone who's thought of what Johnny Walker has to do to be better has all said the exact same thing. And I'm sure Johnny Walker's coaches have said the exact same thing. And I'm sure, like, I don't know. I hope they're telling him that he can't do that. Like, it's not going to work. I don't know what's going on in that camp or in Johnny Walker's head when he gets in the octagon. Maybe everything just goes to shit and he's just like, let's go. But I mean, it's hard to watch him do that over and over again and keep getting the repercussions from it.
Yeah, it is really weird. It's tough because, like, on one side, it's like this could work. Like in the last fight when he did that little thing where and then jumped the flying knee, and it's like if that lands, like it's like such a high risk. Like we talked about this off the pod, but like his hands were like crazy low in some of these exchanges, and like he's just so unorthodox that it makes it hard to fight him if you're like trying to formulate a game plan. But when your style is just as solid as Ankalaev, it's like I don't know. It's a tough one.
For sure. And then even in the second round, you could just see that was wearing on him. Doing that in the first round was just wearing on him. And you could just tell, like, he was getting more tired and tired. And Ankalaev was still there because he was just being smart and waiting him out. And that's what he did. And he shut him down. I mean, I don't think it was a hard person for Ankalaev to game plan for. He was just like, let's be smart and wait him out. And then once he gets tired, finish him. And that's what he did.
And it was like as soon as he got a hold of him, like the way Ankalaev kind of had that weird little exchange, and then Ankalaev just got him on like almost like a single collar tie and just one shot dropped him, and the follow up shot, which must have destroyed Johnny's nose, you could see him like immediately grab for it. I'm like, oof, that's bad.
Well, hopefully Johnny can do some Yuri Prohaska, maybe go in a dark room for 48 hours or something, and just think about how you gotta chill out in your fights a little bit sometimes, but. Ankalaev is going to be moving on probably to a big fight here soon. And what I was thinking was probably Khalil Roundtree for maybe a title eliminator. Yeah,
I could see that if they don't have him wait for the winner of Jamal and Yuri.
Yeah, but I think Khalil's deserves that too at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? Khalil and Johnny Walker would be a fun fight to watch, wouldn't it? Not that Khalil needs to justify himself anymore, but if he's just wanting to be active, which it seems like he is, I doubt he's the type to put himself in that position and then just wait, but that'd be a really fun fight.
It would be, yeah, and I think Khalil smashes Johnny Walker too. Unfortunately,
That would be how tall is Khalil? I wonder what that would look like. Johnny Walker at 6'6".
I think it looked like he was the same height as Anthony Smith.
Okay,
So probably a little shorter than Johnny for sure.
Mm-hmm. Although Ankalaev didn't look that much smaller than him when they were in there together. I always thought like, oh, he's a lot bigger. But then when they got like toe to toe, maybe it's just like Johnny's stance, so he crouches and stuff. But I was like, not a huge size difference here.
Yeah, Ankalaev is pretty tall too. All right, moving on. We got UFC 297. I'm excited to break this one down. We're going to start off just with the main card because there's so many good fights on the main card. We can't do too many of the prelims. I just want to give a shout out to Saidi and then Jasmine Jasnavicius is on the prelims. I'm excited for those two Canadian fighters to go at it and hopefully get some wins there at a Niagara top team. But on the main card here, we're starting off with Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev. This fight has huge implications in the featherweight division.
Yeah, this is a really weird one. Another one that we've been talking about off the podcast. We got to stop doing that at least. But it's just like you have a real test in something we've never seen Arnold Allen had to do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we really haven't. And like the last time he fought a really good grappler, at least if I'm looking at this properly, was Makwan Amirkhani, and that was 6 years ago. And he did well against it. It was a split decision win, but he got some takedowns of his own. Makwan got some takedowns of his own, but it wasn't like a huge domination when it comes to the grappling. But obviously, Movsar Evloev is on a different level when it comes to that grappling.
Oh, he absolutely is. I was saying this to you earlier, but he just reminds me of like a complete reincarnation of Khabib. And I know that's like probably your stereotypical thing to say about, a Russian grappler, but like he just, even like the way he moves his head, the way Khabib would do that like weird like head swinging thing when he would like throw overhands, which Evloev does a lot as well. He just reminded me so much of him, and like just the way his top pressure is, and that was sort of not so much aggressively attacking submissions, but like just top pressure and like winning fights through domination instead of finishing, really.
Yeah. And it is unfortunate that like to judge this fight, we don't know much about Arnold Allen when it comes to the grappling. I know he trains at TriStar mostly in his camps. And that's obviously a very good gym to train at if you want to be all around and good in that grappling too. So he is like representing Canada a little bit in this one. And he was on a 12 fight winning streak until Max Holloway, and he went to a decision with Max. His wins were over Dan Hooker and Calvin Kattar in the two before that. Those are impressive wins. Like Dan Hooker and Calvin Kattar are huge wins for someone.
Yeah, it's tough because you're talking about the cream of the crop at those light divisions for striking. Like you're talking about Max Holloway, who is the ultimate gatekeeper, Dan Hooker, who is an absolute savage, and Calvin Kattar, who's proven himself to be an absolute savage as well. It's like on the feet, you've got to be talking about a guy who has a ton of confidence, and he's got a lot of power. Like you see in that Max fight, like if Max didn't have an absolutely granite chin, like it's so hard because Allen was hitting him with some like massive shots, doing really well, especially for such a young guy against such a vet. Like he had a really great performance. It's just we like this is cut and dry, clear as day. What's going to happen? What are we like? What can he possibly do? Because that the plan is going to be to get him on the ground.
Yeah, because I wanted to look into how good of a grappler Arnold Allen is. So I looked into like some stats, and there hasn't been a takedown attempted from Arnold or any of his opponents in the last 3 years. He hasn't defended a takedown. He hasn't shot a takedown. Just
been setting him up for absolute bangers, great fights to watch. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I believe he has the range on Evloev. Evloev's a pretty short featherweight, and Evloev hasn't finished a fight since 2018. He hasn't finished a fight in the UFC yet. So, I mean, if Arnold Allen has like good getting up, he's not really going to be too scared of that submission coming in or something coming in too quick as he's getting up. So, I mean, he can fight to like get back up to his feet pretty confidently. And if he's got confidence in his grappling and his defense, like I think he does have a good chance in winning this one.
Yeah, I would like, yeah, I agree. It's like I said before, it's like, what he's got to try and do. He's got to try and keep his distance, land those big shots, and keep Evloev off of him. I mean and I'm sorry, is it Evloev or Evloev?
Evloev.
Okay. And that Evloev fight with Diego Lopez was crazy because of his high level jiu-jitsu. But that's the thing. It's like, it's almost like, and I go back to these like high level Habib fights, but or Islam. It's like the same kind of matchup as when we saw Islam fight Charles. It's like, you knew he could get under the ground, but the question was, can Charles somehow find a way to submit him? And Diego Lopez was doing the same thing. He was throwing submissions all over the place. He actually had him in a lot of trouble. Like I thought there was times he was going to finish him that fight, and I thought, oh my, this guy's debuting, and he's going to finish his undefeated, very sought after prospect. Obviously, he couldn't get it done, and good job to Evloev to manage to get through that fight and get the win. But Arnold Allen, like I'm sure he's going to be out there trying to finish the fight as early as he can on the feet.
Yeah, and that also brings me to another like fight that kind of is a little similar, is that Islam and Arman Sarukian fight. I think when you're going against these Dagestani wrestler style, like a lot of coaches will talk about, and a lot of fighters will think, when someone gets them down, don't expend too much energy trying to get back up or throwing up random stuff, because you're going to gas yourself out. But really, your only other option is to just lay underneath them the whole fight.
Yeah.
Because if you try to get up too slow and just use, like, they're so good at just getting those grips and that strength, and they're just going to keep you down. But where we see success from the guys who are doing well against these type of guys is when you are a little spazzy on the ground, you're scrambling, you're causing them to be like, what is going on? And going for knee bars or like grabbing legs or and getting underneath. Like, it's just those, it does take a little more energy expenditure. And then they're going to have to work even harder too. So really your only other option is to submit and get and stay under him for the rest of the round. Like, a lot of announcers will be like, I don't think he's getting up for the rest of the round, like that kind of thing. So if you have to just fight to get up and cause mayhem down there.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things I've been hearing, like just through like listening to the commentary team as they're talking on fights, I think Dominic Cruz is one of the big ones who said it, is like not accepting a takedown as it's happening. Like a lot of guys have success in trying to make a scramble. Like, okay, like a guy picks you up and slams you, and instead of like taking that 2 seconds to like gather yourself, like it's like Daniel Cormier has talked about it a lot. Like he never accepted his shoulders touching the ground. Like it's like as soon as he's like up, like the one shoulder's up, the other shoulder's up, like your hips are moving, like, which I'm sure is harder to do than for me to say, because this guy will be holding you completely flat to the ground. But hopefully Arnold Allen can make it scramble and get up and try to keep it on the feet. But this has huge implications for the featherweight division.
Yeah, it could even be a title eliminator depending on how or if someone gets a finish.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind seeing Arnold Allen fight Max Holloway again at some point.
Yeah, me neither.
That was a great fight.
All right, moving on, we got Chris Curtis and Marc-Andre Barriault. We know that Chris Curtis is one of Sean Strickland's main training partners, so he's been in this heavy camp with Sean, which is good for him, for sure. And Marc-Andre Barriault's nothing to scoff at, but I think there is a little bit of a skill discrepancy when it comes to this fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Chris Curtis has got a ton of experience, and he is he's a really great striker, very defensive boxer, similar to Sean Strickland, really. Like you're going to see this guy try to knock your lights out with his hands. Yeah, like it's a tough one. What's their coach's name? Eric
Nixick.
Eric Nixick. That guy, he is so smart. Like if you just listen to him in between rounds, like I was watching the Kelvin Gaston fight with Chris Curtis, and he was talking about just countering, I think it was countering with Chris Curtis's left hook. And then like, I love to see, like, I know as barbaric as MMA can be, it just like, it makes me so happy when I hear a guy get corner advice and then he goes out and actually like implements the game plan. Like, especially when you know it's going to come, like when they're like, oh, throw that 1-2 or throw that like one, rear side high kick, and they do it and it lands. Maybe not even finish the fight, but just like the tiniest bit of success. And you're like, this is what makes this such a beautiful sport to watch.
Yeah,
like
100%.
And I think that guy seems smart.
He is very smart. And I think he builds fighters that can implement that game plan. Like Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis are perfect examples of that. And I think with Marc-Andre Barriault, I think unfortunately if you can execute a game plan well and watch film, there's a lot of stuff that you can pick out with this. Because I was watching some of Marc-Andre Barriault's film. He does crash a lot. He almost turns away from shots as they're coming, or as he's throwing, he's looking away. And then when he gets in tight, there's a lot of and Chris Curtis in tight with that Philly shell is going to be throwing like some great combos. It's almost like Jeff Neal, obviously Sean Strickland too. But yeah, there's a lot. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot that Chris Curtis can see out of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, Chris Curtis is a grizzled vet. Like this guy's had, 40, 41 fights, something like that. Like he's fought a lot, and not that Barriault hasn't. And he's a Canadian guy, so I would love to cheer for him. But if I'm putting money down, it's on Chris Curtis to get this done via TKO.
Yeah. And like last point, Marc-Andre Barriault, I watched the fight against Julian Marquez, and then his fight against Eric Anders as well. In that fight against Marquez, in both fights, what Marc-Andre wants is a firefight. He wants to start throwing, and he wants to like get into it with you because he thinks that his gas tank is going to outlast yours, and he thinks that his power is going to land before yours does. And what happened with Marquez and Anders, they both agreed to that firefight, and they both went in it and threw caution to the wind. And what happened with Marquez was he gassed out first. And I don't think Chris Curtis is going to do that. I think he's going to execute a game plan well. He's going to be patient, and he's just going to wait on him to crash, and then he's going to take his moments when they come.
Yeah, I think he's a very technical striker, Chris Curtis. I think you're going to see that one. There's a lot of potential, performance of the nights, but I could see Chris Curtis having a really good showing there.
Yeah, me too. Let's move on to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I mentioned this to you before as well, but it's too bad that Chris Curtis and Sean fight out of the same camp and the same coach, because those two guys, and I'm sure people in their gym have seen it 10,000 times, but oh my, would I love to see those guys throw down.
Yeah, it'd be like a boxing match.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. Moving on, we got Neil Magny and Mike Malott. This is a tough one. I honestly, because of what I've been seeing out of Neil Magny recently, like with the loss to Gilbert Burns and then Ian Gary, I think it's tough for me to look at him and say he's a tough opponent for an up-and-coming prospect. But then I look back a little bit, and I saw he had wins over Daniel Rodriguez and then Phil Rowe and then Jeff Neal as well, which is also a very impressive win looking back on it. And those are not too far back. So I think I don't want to underestimate him too much going into this one.
No, I agree with you. Magny's a vet, absolutely. He's had a ton of fights. He's seen a lot of guys. I also agree that Ian Gary fight was like eye-opening. Like it was like watching a lion stalk its prey. And I don't mean any disrespect to Neil Magny, but I just think that if Mike Malott has the same kind of momentum coming into this, which I think he does, and from watching him fight, he's got like a similar type of style, that nice kickboxing. Like he's a beast, man. He hits hard, and it just feels like he's got the momentum. Again, Canadian guy, so it's going to be hard for me not to cheer for this guy to do well. And like Ian kicked the leg right off of Neil Magny, like early, like that low calf kick. Like he was like kicking him so hard it was knocking him off balance. Like it'd be hard to think that Mike Mallott's not going to come into this with a similar style. Like that'd be my game plan if I was going into this fight, attack that low leg. Although there is a pretty significant reach advantage that you'd pointed out between the two to Neil.
Yeah, 7 inches. But I think with a lot of guys with that reach advantage, there's a little bit of fear of that, like getting knocked out on the end of your punches. But with Neil Magny, I don't think anyone's like worried about getting finished when it comes to like the stand-up game and even the like getting submitted. I think Mike Malott, I'm heavy on Mike Malott in this one. Don't get me wrong. For sure, I'm heavy on Mike Malott. I was just playing the devil's advocate a little bit for Neil, and hopefully Mike's not coming into it like too confident where he's not worried at all, which I know he's not. Like Mike has 3 finishes in 3 UFC fights so far over Adam Fuggett, Miggy Gala, and then Johan Lennes, which are all big wins. And then, I mean, obviously it's his biggest test so far, but I'm pretty confident that he's going to get this one done. And I see a very similar fight, honestly, to the Gilbert Burns fight over the Ian Gary fight. I think he's probably going to get a hold of him, and he's just going to the strength's going to be too different. And I think he's going to probably submit him.
I would love to see that too. I mean, again, Canadian guy, got to cheer for him. I'm all in on the proper plane.
Yeah, me too. All right, next up we got the co-main event. It's Racquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva. It's a weird one because I mean, just the women's divisions are just so like on and off, and you see like there's no MMA math. In the women's divisions, there's compared to the men's, even in the men's, there's not very much, but in the women's divisions, there's no MMA math whatsoever.
No, you're totally right. I mean, we're talking about guys like Bilal Muhammad who can go on these long streaks and still, be pushed off for a title. And then you look at like some of the women's divisions, and I think it's just because we don't have the amount of bodies in there fighting. But yeah, because when you look at this, it's like this is the bantamweight title fight, and looking at both of these records, it seems skewed for sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously both of them deserve it just as much as anyone else in that division, or more for sure, and that's why they're at that title shot. I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Racquel Pennington she's fun to watch. She's a good boxer. She likes to get into it, and she's a clean boxer too. I mean, I think I was watching that Ketlen Vieira fight, and she knew that Ketlen had that power if it was there, and she was staying at her range. But Racquel did a really good job of closing that distance and crashing without being at risk, just movement, head movement, rolling, slipping as she's coming in, and she's got power. So I think it is a little bit of a striker versus grappler matchup. I think if Mayra gets a hold of Racquel, it's probably going to be a tough night. I think Mayra has 7 out of her 10 wins by submission. And then Racquel, obviously, she has 6 of her 8 losses by decision. I think one loss by KO and 1 by submission. So it's not like there's a big discrepancy when it comes to one person submitting a lot and one losing by submission. So I'm excited for this one. I think it's a pretty even matchup.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Racquel. I agree. That was beautiful the way she set that up. Like you're right. She would blitz in and throw like long boxing combinations, and she implemented another person implementing a game plan really, really well. And she's strong, like you said. Like she's got a good frame. She hits hard. You could tell she was landing some massive shots. One thing I noticed with Mayra Bueno Silva is that she did seem to have a lot of success in the clinch.
Yeah.
So I would like, and you're totally right. Like with the submission game, that would probably be her plan. Like that ninja choke she had on Holly, even though it got overturned, was nasty. Like just standing ninja choke was really, really cool. But like she was doing a lot of clinching, and I would just worry that like Racquel might try to blitz similar thing, and then Bueno Silva like ties it up with the clinch, and then maybe takes it down. If I have to pick one, I'm probably going Bueno Silva by submission. But I am excited because Racquel, it definitely has some power in her hands that I would love to see.
Yeah, me too. And I think I'm probably going to go with Mayra as well. But I think the 15-9 record from Racquel and how long she's been in the UFC and just the tough times, I think it's fun to root for the underdog in this one, and it would be awesome to see her have that belt. I'm pretty sure her partner is Tisha Torres, and they just had a baby together. I think, Tisha just had a baby, I think pretty recently. So it would be nice to see her with the belt. That'd be sweet. And then there'd be some good matchups in that division from that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. And moving on to the main event, we don't need too many notes for this one. I think this is something that we know a lot about, and we're both super excited for this one. I've been excited for this one for a while, like especially since that feud now that's built. Just how exciting Sean Strickland is, how exciting Dricus is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the UFC has done a pretty much perfect job in marketing this fight, like sitting the guys near each other at that UFC event. Like, yeah. Oops, what are we doing? Yeah. Oh, I can't believe this. Like they've really killed this whole thing has gone perfectly for them. Like they've hyped this fight up in a massive way, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, and I talked to Gilbert recently in an interview. It hasn't gone up yet, but he was saying that I asked him if he thinks that the UFC set this up on purpose, like put them next to each other. He said no. He just said, but he said when Sean walked in and noticed how close they were, he's like, okay, listen, Gilbert, I know something's going to happen. So when I tell you guys, he said, Sean said, when I tell you guys to move, just move.
Just classic GTA character.
Yeah.
I love it. It's going down. Just get your kids out of the way.
Yeah. It's hilarious. And I mean, he's not wrong. Like, obviously, if you're that close to a guy, and those two guys are just full of testosterone, like compared to like a lot of the guys in the UFC, those guys are just ready to go on site at all times. And then, I mean, I didn't want to like talk about this too much, but we can bring it up as Sean, like I heard Sean say that he texted him that if he talks about what he was going to talk about one more time, he's going to stab him, whether it's at a press conference or whatever. I'm worried that Dricus in the press conference is going to do it just because of that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy because you just don't know what you're getting with Sean Strickland because he's so crazy. Like he does all this crazy stuff. And if you ever listen to some of his podcasts, like he tells some crazy stories. Like he really does go out there and like expose himself. Like this guy wears it on his sleeve, but obviously he also feels a lot of these emotions very hard. So like you wonder, to your point, is Dricus gonna, try to get under his skin even more? Is he gonna try and light that fire? Yeah. Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? He's gonna go and try and punch me even harder. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, unless he does try to stab him.
Stab him, but they're both fighters. Like Dricus probably feels that he could defend himself just as well as Sean could stab him. So I mean, and there's likely going to be security there.
Yeah, and you'd hope that Sean would in some way be smart enough to know that he's going to get paid to fight this man on Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I'm excited. I don't know. I don't love all the like. I like the shit talking. Don't get me wrong. I love that. The Connor, who's that guy? All that. I love all that. I don't love the like super personal, like your family this, your family that. That I could do without. But I also understand their point. I get what they're coming. They want to sell the show. Like the Colby thing, it felt a little distasteful, a lot distasteful. But like I get they're trying to sell. They're trying to get the buys. They're trying to get in their head, which is obviously a huge contributing factor at that level. I don't know. It's a lot.
We could dive into the matchup, and I think for Dricus, I think one of the main factors of him winning this fight is getting Sean Strickland emotional, because I think he has a way less chance of winning if Sean is smart and not emotional at all.
Yes, I agree. It's a really weird one technically, because like when I look at Dricus as the more complete mixed martial artist. But I look at Sean as a tougher puzzle to solve, if that makes sense.
I look at Sean as the more complete martial artist and the tougher puzzle to solve, but I look at Dricus as anything can happen at any time.
And Dricus has got a lot of power in his hands. Like he has landed some pretty big shots. He really has.
Yeah, 19 of his 20 wins have been by finish. He has one win that wasn't a finish, and it was against Brad Tavares in that war that went to a decision. And not many people are going to take what Brad Tavares took in that fight. His hair was covered in blood. His blonde hair was just covered in blood.
Yeah, and Dricus does have a background in judo, if I believe his family is full of martial artists. So like you have seen some of that. I think it was a Darren Till fight where he actually did that little a nice little hip toss style takedown. Like he does have some crafty stuff, and he's more unorthodox than I think we give him a lot of credit for. So it could be a hard puzzle for Sean. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, imagine getting shoulder thrown by Dricus with his full force in the first round.
Yeah, it's tough. My concern, like, as everyone was saying, was that like this is 5 rounds, and we know that Sean Strickland's going to show up. Obviously, he looks bodied up. Like, have you seen the guy? He looks like in the best shape we've ever seen him in his life. But like, it seems like he might have a different mentality. Like, you look at him in that Adesanya fight, like he wasn't talking that shit during the fight. Like he was head down, he was focused, he was laser dialed in. Like I don't know. I hope we see that. Yeah, I hope we see that Sean Strickland. And if that's the guy that Dricus is up against, like, and it's going to be a long night, like especially 5 rounds, which we haven't seen Dricus like, or was his.
I don't think he's ever gone 5 rounds. I don't know, but I don't think he's ever gone 5.
Never gone.
Because he only has the 1 win by decision, and that was a 3-rounder. And then his only losses were 3rd round KO and 3rd round submission.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, it's deep waters with a guy like Sean Strickland because he doesn't let off in 4 and 5. Yep. We look at what's his name, Imavov. That fight with Sean Strickland, like Sean just did what Sean does and just put the pressure on him and peeled him, because Imavov he's a really great striker, good. Like really good. He's another guy that I think, like, we're talking about like dark horses of a division. I think that guy's got a lot of potential in the next few years. Yeah. Really cool, clean striker. I think he could do a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, like, looking at this fight, when I talked about those 3rd round or losses for Dricus, before I looked at his losses, my first thought was that he got finished late because with his style, because he gasses, and that was exactly what I thought before I looked. And then his only 2 losses were by finish in the 3rd round. So, and Sean has only been finished twice in his career. He's never been submitted. And he wins late. and he wins decisions. So I think if Dricus gasses, hopefully not in the second or third, but if he gasses in the second or third, it's going to be a long night for him. I don't know what his game plan is. I don't know if he expects to go out there and finish him in the first two. I don't know if he's thinking, okay, this might go 5, so I'm ready to go 5, and I'm going to go out there and be smarter than I have before. I don't think he's going to come out like that. I think he's going to come out, and Sean's going to have to weather a storm for the first 2 rounds, and if he does, he's probably going to win that fight.
Yeah, and like it's tough because like another key weapon that Sean uses that he did against Imavov as well, it was the that teep to the lower stomach. Like it's just little, it's small, but he shoots that thing, it just pops you right above the belly button or around, and like that drains you. Getting hit in the stomach like that, especially when you're coming forward, especially like if that's what Dricus' game plan is to come forward and try to put on him early, like he's gonna be popping him. And Sean has proven he's one of the hardest guys in the UFC to hit. Like he is defensively sound. Like the way he does that Philly shell, the shoulder roll, the way he gets out, like he's really hard to hit clean. So I think that between that kick to the body, Dricus's, I don't want to say known gas tank, but unknown gas tank, and Sean's defensive like presence, I think we're going to see Sean probably win by decision is my guess.
Yeah, I'm not going to make a guess officially, but for this one, it's going to be a really good fight, and I'm super excited to see what happens because I think there is 2 options. I think the options are Dricus finishes him in the first 2, maybe the third. If he doesn't, I think Sean's going to take it in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th and probably win a decision.
I agree. I do agree because of the power that Dricus has. Like he is, like we talked about, he's unorthodox. He lands big shots. He hits hard, and he does have he's got a good ground game. Like I wouldn't be upset to see him try to take Sean to the ground and try for a submission. Like he can hold his own on the ground too.
Yeah, and I'm curious if that's maybe why Sean's gotten into such good shape because he's thinking if Dricus gets me down, that strength difference is going to be crazy. Just the pure strength. If Dricus is holding him down, it doesn't really matter because they're both such good grapplers. It doesn't matter how good of a defensive wrestler Sean is at that point. If Dricus has a hold of him, that strength difference is going to be crazy. At least before Sean got in this shape, I don't know what the difference is going to be like, but I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and I will say that like one thing I noticed about Sean, and I heard a breakdown on it, is like one of the things that Alex was able to capitalize on was Sean's like hand play. Like one of the reasons why he was able to land that left hook was that he was taking that shot to the body on Sean, and then Sean was reaching down for the body shot. So then Alex feinted it, come up top of the left hook to finish it. And then a similar thing with Adesanya early in the Adesanya fight. I thought I couldn't believe how much he was biting at the hand feints of Adesanya as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe Dricus's coaches have seen something there and they've got a game plan set up to try and finish him up top, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it, and we'll be breaking it down next week, so make sure you stay tuned for that for our reaction. But yeah, Christian, thank you so much for another great episode.